I've added a new tutorial section to every character's details page. This acts as a strategy guide for new players and details new mechanics found in the Combalance. Doom movement now has a much higher ground speed, matching the original Doom. Doom movement's air acceleration reduces at high speeds when jumping to prevent strafe jumping from becoming overpowered. Medium weight Doom champions have the original Doom speed. Zedek has a slightly reduced speed than medium. And Manelkir has an even slower speed than Zedek. The reasons behind these changes will be showcased later. Gordon Freeman now comes with his own unique Gold Source movement class, aimed at replicating the feeling of the original Half-Life game. The Long Jump module has also been implemented into his kit. Gordon's movement is essentially the same as CPM movement, but he cannot strafe jump or accelerate if he is holding forward input. Unlike CPM movement though, Gordon's long jump will boost him past the 700 unit speed cap, so with a bit of practice you can start bunny hopping just like you could back in the old Half-Life days. Gordon's active ability cooldown duration has been increased because it has been completely replaced with the Pteropod from Half-Life 2. On impact, the Pteropod will spawn 3 antlions which roam around and look for enemies. After a short period of time they will disappear, but every 8 seconds the Pteropods will spawn another wave. If the Pteropod survives for around 30 seconds, one more antlion will be added to that wave, capping out at 5 antlions. Antlions will match their team or player's color for easy identification. The pods will time out after 96 seconds, and they leave a very conspicuous green cloud betraying their position. They also have a hurt box and only 2 health points. They are invulnerable while they are spawning the very first wave of antlions, but after that, they can be destroyed. In PvE, the pod will be destroyed instantly, spawning 6 antlions with much stronger stats. CPM champions now have reduced air acceleration and a slower run speed to reduce their counter-strafe ability as a trade-off for being the best movement class in the game. Intruder. Now that CPM movement has been weakened, Intruder has gotten one useful buff. While in Wendigo Curse, Intruder retains his CPM movement and his new lower movement speed is increased to that of a lightweight champion. Kayn. Kayn's crouch slide properties now change along a spectrum. Instead of a flat buff, his crouch slide speed is determined by either his fall height or his current momentum. Moving into the weapons, the nailgun firing speed has been reduced slightly to every 4 ticks from 3. And on paper, this means the DPS is now 105 instead of 140. For reference, the machine gun DPS is only 90. The beloved lightning gun has had its range decreased by 25%. Its damage has been increased to 8 from 7, giving it 140 DPS, up from 122.5. The rocket launcher. It has had its splash damage fall off heavily increased. Arguably the strongest weapon in the kit that QCDE offers, the reward for missing a shot and only landing splash damage was still very high. The super nail gun has also had a damage reduction to 18 from 20. The tri-bolt has received a small recovery buff. Previously 1.3 seconds, it is now 1.2 seconds. The damage has been reduced from 45 to 40 as a law of equivalent exchange. And now into the juicy character changes. Brock will now start with full armor points, and the heavy armor will give him 199 AP instead of 150. Corvus now takes 125% damage when in flight. A debuff icon will be shown. Corvus now has a burnout mechanic, tying his regeneration to his flight stocks. When fully stocked, Corvus heals 2 HP as normal. At 2 stocks, regeneration is reduced to 1 HP a second, and his movement reduced by 2%. At 1 stock, Corvus receives no regeneration and he moves at 96% speed. At 0 stocks, Corvus will take 12.5% more damage and moves 6% slower. Corvus now has an additional passive. In addition to cooldown reduction, Hourglasses will give him HP as well. Doomguy's BFG cooldown has been reduced to 40 seconds from 60. The BFG's ending animation has been reduced so the weapon holster occurs faster. The Doomslayer's base max armor has been set to 100 AP from 75, and his max armor overstack increased to 200 AP. In addition, he has an additional passive named Blue Armor or Combat Armor, in which overstacked armor no longer degenerates. All of these armor changes for the Doomslayer are homages to the original Doom game. However, they also provide a very high defensive potential for the character. New players tend to gravitate towards the Doomslayer because he looks cool and he's probably the most iconic character in the game, and these will allow them to make a bit more mistakes before dying. In practice, I can confidently say that the Doomslayer is now a very strong character. A very far cry from the original vanilla version of the game where he was one of the worst. Duke Nukem has gotten a very large overhaul to his freeze thrower. Duke now carries much more freeze thrower ammunition. The weapon now fires a thick gust of freezing air which passes through opponents. It will both damage and apply freeze progression. The strength of both effects will lessen with range. Freeze progression will only be applied to an opponent directly hit by the stream at close range. Damage is done in an AoE around the stream. Frozen players no longer receive reduced ice damage when frozen, and Duke's boot damage has been slightly decreased. These changes ensure that the Duke is still a close-range killer, but not an automatic loss if he's looking at you down a hallway. Galen's ability cooldown has been reduced to 30 seconds from 35. Totems now have 80 health points. Totems now do 60% of their original damage, 45 from 75. Super totem damage is unaffected. Galen's super totems now overheal 100 health points. Galen's passive channeling now overstacks 20% of stim packs and medkits, so he can continue proccing this passive even if he's at full health. Stim packs will only give 5% now, down from 10, medkits still give 10% reduction, and HP bonuses give 2% now. Grayson's active ability has been reworked in order to rectify a really terrible bug that broke player movement. It now launches enemies and then spawns a blue stasis field which keeps enemies floating. Enemies can now air control in here, but they're debuffed for 4 seconds with a slowing effect. Lastly, when Leash Thumper times out and slams itself into the ground, it will launch enemies and do minor explosive damage. This was a really cool effect, but it had no utility or use, so now it does. Hunter's lesson rewards have been increased from 2 HP or AP to 6 HP or AP. Kane's injection now heals 100 health points over 10 seconds instead of 75 HP instantly. Keel has a new passive named Demolition. Any explosive projectile shot by Keel will have 25% more force and a 10% larger splash radius. This will affect rockets, tri-bolts, and nails. Keel now carries 6 grenades, up from 5, and they now fire in an alternating pattern from his left and then right shoulders, instead of right down the middle of the screen. The firing arc has been slightly adjusted. The damage has been decreased, and splash damage has been decreased greatly. However, direct hits now deal bonus damage, and the splash damage radius has been greatly increased. The firing delay in between grenades has been tripled, because this was just retarded before. Lo Wang's Nobitsura Kage now deals 3 damage per tick, down from 9. Lo Wang can also earn a slight bonus on direct hit, noted by a hit marker. Nobitsura Kage no longer explodes when striking the ground. This was a hidden mechanic that gave him extra damage for some reason. In PvE game modes, Lucienne will now drop her Martyrdom Fireball Immolation at critical health instead of on death. Anytime that Lucienne is restored to full health, this passive will recharge. Your passive is no longer useless when playing through single-player WoDs. Major's cooldown has been increased by 5 seconds to 50 seconds. Her active ability duration has been increased by 2 seconds, so it's now 6 total. Her active ability firing input has been changed from fire to the active ability key. And this is because she can now fire her weapon while using her active ability. Major's airstrike damage has been heavily altered. Bullseyes deal massive damage. Damage within the painted target area is around 100. Splash damage outside of the painted target area deals 30 or less, but it's in a massive radius. And Major now takes full damage from her own airstrikes. These changes are intended to allow Major to both defend herself while setting airstrikes or pressure her opponents into them. And because of all these buffs, she has to be more careful with how she uses them or she'll nuke herself. Manel Kier now has a new Bloodlust passive. Killing monsters will extend your minion's life and heal his health slightly. Killing a player now refreshes your servant's timer fully and heals him even more. It used to lower it. Keep fragging to keep Dave alive as long as possible. At the start of the video, it was mentioned that Manel Kier is the slowest Doom movement character now, and that is because he can wield his own new weapon, the Arc of Death. You can equip this by holding the Use key, essentially a hit scan super nail gun. The alt fire performs a CQC melee blast, but this also summons an electrical storm that you can throw out down hallways or to pressure enemies. The arc uses mana as ammunition. Mana regenerates over time when not in use. Manel Kier starts with 30 mana. Killing monsters or players gives bonus mana. Manel Kier was the worst character in 3.0, and now he can be quite scary. He's a snowball character who starts relatively weak, given his small stack and low friction, which makes him very easy to track. But once he gets going, he can absolutely maul. Orb's ability cooldown has been reduced from 45 seconds to 40 seconds. Orb's bounce height has been increased by 3%. Orb's drone now has 10 more seconds of active use. Orb can now stalk enemies with his drone. When you view an enemy player through the drone's eye, you will fill that player's stalking gauge. After approximately 3 seconds of stalking, Orb will inflict a massive 135% damage debuff, which lasts for 20 seconds. Orb's drone will fire a red beam, alerting other players to its location when it is in use. This beam is mostly invisible to the user to prevent user blindness. Orb's drone is now solid when the eye is closed, allowing it to be used as a stepping stone or blockade. Orb's drone is extra translucent when inactive and fully opaque when in use. The drone's primary explosion damage and range has been massively increased. Drone control now ends immediately after activating the self-destruct sequence, making it more committal. The drone's self-destruct explosion splash damage fall-off has been increased. Alt-fire while controlling the drone will turn it into a missile, which you can control using the mouse. This missile does less damage than the self-destruct sequence and moves slower than players run, but it can be used to apply disjointed pressure anywhere on the map. Painkiller can now cancel his demon form with the active ability key. Doing so will refund souls based on the amount of time remaining for his demon form. Demon form time has been increased by 10 seconds, its speed has been increased slightly, and its gravity has been increased slightly. Previously, the demon morph was highly committal and difficult to achieve, but pretty easy to retreat from. Now, Painkiller can back out of situations where he cannot apply pressure as a demon. Moreover, his demon form is now easier to chase people with, and he'll have more time to secure a kill. Ranger's ability cooldown has been increased from 25 seconds to 35 seconds. Dire Orb's ripping damage has been halved. The Dire Orb explosion damage has been reduced by 30 points, 100 to 70. Ranger cannot teleport for 0.2 seconds after throwing the orb. Both Ranger and Doomslayer now have a retro voice set, which can be activated by using the other gender. This setting can be found in the All Engine Options or Advanced Options menu under the Player Setup. Or you can just type in gender other into the console. Sorgal has received a small buff to her claw's primary fire. She can now hit enemies in a wider cone around her crosshair, but she will receive reduced damage if it's not a direct hit. Vormatur has received a very large additional system to his horror. Horror will strengthen as he inflicts damage. At 350 damage, he will receive a token. With one token, Horror will spawn a highly damaging ring of black filth at its center. This ring will linger for quite some time, and can be used as an area denial tool. At 800 damage, he will receive a second token. At 2 tokens, this ring is upgraded into a storm. It does less damage, but it covers a much wider area. It can be used to bolster your combat, or shut down entire zones for the enemy. At 1200 damage, he will receive his third and final token. If Vormatur collects all 3 tokens, then Horror will torment enemies in a massive radius. When tormented, players are forced to listen to the cries of the damned as they are dealt inescapable damage over time. Finally, for each token that Vormatur carries, he will receive a slight bonus to cooldown reduction. Vormatur falls off at higher levels of play due to his large frame and strict reliance on health pickups and Horror's blind effect. This reliance forced him to play extremely conservatively when behind during a duel. This is because he would take too much damage to offset with HP pickups if he couldn't cover his approach with Horror's blind effect. These new additions reward Vormatur players for successfully defending themselves when playing from behind, and these rewards give Vormatur utility and range that he normally does not have access to, to help force a comeback or maintain a kill streak when horror is on cooldown. Hopefully, these provide enough of an incentive for an alternative, safer playstyle, should it be chosen. Last but not least is Zedek. Changed the stomp damage formula to deal much less damage from small drops and a little less damage from high drops, but stomps will now launch objects and players a small amount. Zedek now deals massive bonus damage to enemies that he falls directly on top of. Let's go Market Guardian! To help facilitate this well-loved mechanic, Zedek has bonus air acceleration at low speeds to help land Goomba stomps on people. Lastly, but really not that importantly, I updated the movement class descriptions in the bios, fixed random grammatical errors in some lore and descriptions, blah 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 blah. And that's all for me. Go fuck yourself. Thanks, bye.